welcome to Big Nito News. I am Big Nito, and today we'll be discussing the topic of the contemporary Western world. First on the topic of the decline of the Soviet Union is Campbell Rambo.
Big Nito. The decline of the Soviet Union all began with a man named Mikhail Gorbachev. He was the leader of the Soviets in 1985, although the man who ruled before him was Leonid Brezhnev and had the mindset to keep Eastern Europe in a communist hands with no interest in reform at this time. Tensions between the U.S. and the Soviets began to relax, but once Ronald Reagan was elected president, it became even chiller. It was around that time that the Soviet Union was seriously ailing with a declining economy and a rise in infant mortality, a surge in alcoholism, and poor working conditions. On top of this, the Cold War was happening. It didn't come to an end until Gorbachev became president. Gorbachev's biggest problem was his multi-ethnic nature of the Soviet Union. Gorbachev created the Iron Grip to keep ethnic tension contained. On August 1991, a group of conservatives arrested Gorbachev and tried to seize power. The attempt failed. This attempt involved the Russian President Yeltsin. By 1999, Yeltsin resigned and Vladimir Putin took over and still rules to this day.
Thank you, Campbell. What you had to say about Michael Gorbachev, Vladimir Putin, and the others that contributed to the fall of the Soviet Union was very interesting. Up next to talk about Eastern Europe, we have Kiana P., who will discuss the economic issues that led to the food shortages and poverty. Take it away, Kiana P.
Take a trip to Eastern Europe. Follow me.
We're going on a trip in a favorite rocket ship. Getting blue sky, little Einstein.
Many Eastern Europeans were discontented with their Soviet-style government. Freedom of speech was limited, and housing and consumer goods were often in short supply. In Poland, workers' protests led to demands for change in Poland. In 1980, a worker named Lech Valenzuela organized a national trade union known as Solidarity. In December 1990, he was chosen as president, but was soon defeated by Alexander Kowalski. But he continued Poland's move toward prosperous pre-market economy. In Czechoslovakia, after Soviet troops crushed the reform movement in 1968, the communist government in Czechoslovakia used massive repression to maintain its power. In December 1989, the communist government collapsed. In Romania, the communist leader Nicolae Ceausescu and his wife Elena set up a rigid dictatorial regime in Romania. His economic policies led to a sharp drop in living standards, including food shortages and the rationing of bread, flour, and sugar. Without the backing of the Soviet Union, communist governments in Eastern Europe felt a popular revolution.
Nikolai's economic policies led to food shortages.
This is the traditional Romanian flag.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Pangolonium, for what you had to say about Eastern Europe. Up next, we have Little Uzi Vert, who's going to discuss Europe and the United States. He's going to mostly focus on Richard Nixon's influence on the relations between Eastern Europe and the United States of America. Take it away, Leo.
Thanks, Big Nito. Now, between the early 1950s and late 1970s, Western Europe experienced basically full employment. By 1981, the Socialists had become the leading party in the National Assembly. The Socialist leader, Francois Mitterrand, was elected president. Richard Nixon became president of the U.S. in 1968. He had a couple scandals. On August 9, 1974, Nixon resigned his presidency rather than face almost certain impeachment because the Watergate scandal. Now, to end off this section, the U.S. led the invasion of Iraq and was based on statements that the dictator Saddam Hussein possessed WMDs, or weapons of mass destruction. Now, back to you, Big Nito. Now this is a picture of Richard Nixon explaining his Watergate scandal.
This is a picture of Francois Mitterrand.
Hey, we're still firing Leo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, him just hit me. Oh, my bad. Thank you, Leo, for your discussion on Europe and the United States. It was interesting, I guess. But now we have a time for our sponsors, which will be. I think you'll like it. Catch you later.
Get the all-new CO2 slides, made by these three ballers. When you get them, you'll be able to ball just like Austin Houston, Dodo Man, and Jay Nasty. Just get them for the low price of $495. This right here is one of our customers rising up to the occasion.
Oh my goodness.
Grab the all-new CO2 slides for a low price of $495.
Wow, those CO2s are something else. I'll have to get me a pair. Up next, we have Dodo Man talking about Western society and culture. He might even tap a little bit on the 92 Dream Team. That should be interesting.
During the more modern times, science and technology revolutionized during the war. Governments recruited many scientists so that they can develop new weapons and new machinery. Along with this, there was a huge increase in population. In October 1999, the UN announced the world's population had grown to 6 billion, only 12 years after passing 5 billion. By the year 2050, the world's population is expected to reach 9.3 billion. During this time, there was also a huge problem and a huge epidemic called AIDS. The AIDS epidemic is a disease that attacks the immune system, and it was discovered in 1981. Many people contracted this disease, and even some famous people contracted it, such as legendary tennis star Arthur Ashe and one of the greatest basketball players of all time, Magic Johnson, who was part of the legendary 1992 basketball Dream Team. That's it. Back to you, Benito.
Wow, that was amazing, Dodo. That was much better than Leo's. Next, we have Austin Houston. He's going to have an interview with Michael Gorbachev and discuss the fall of the Soviet Union. Take it away, Austin.
Thank you for coming today, Mr. Gorbachev. Thank you for having me. Well, I'd like to first congratulate you for being chosen as the leader of the Communist Party in this year, 1980, that we're in.
Well, it's not just me who wants to make Mother Russia great again.
Okay, speaking of change, you have a basis of these reforms. What is it? Pesticide?
Haha, perestroika, yes. My colleagues and I want to start a market economy that's more responsive to consumers.
Okay, thank you for this interview. Now back to you, Big Nato.
Thank you for wrapping it up, Austin. This has been a long night. I'll be checking out, but I hope to catch you guys next time on Big Nito Nightly News.